Hi, my name is Sarah. Welcome to Discover Hope. And today we are going to be talking about what exactly is Discover Hope, why now, and why is she inviting us to sponsor or to make donations right out of the gate. This is Discover Hope, Stories of Spoken Hope, a place to come when the script of your life gets flipped. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I literally am so excited because by the time of this recording, Discover Hope has been officially launched for a week, and the response has been amazing, you guys. And it's been so incredible to see people's comments because we're on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And I'm doing all of this behind the scenes stuff, beyond the editing and all of that. That's way out of my league. But as far as disseminating it into the different streaming platforms and all of the different things, that is yours truly. And if you know me, you know this is not my lane. But I am finding it really fun. I'm enjoying that dynamic of it. But it's so cute. He'll be 14 on Wednesday. My son Cash was the person on Spotify, the person who made this podcast is my mom. And my second born son was the first one to comment. I was like, oh my gosh, Rocco, I didn't even know you can comment on, these things. So please know that I'm genuinely reading them and responding. Not that you have to, but there's no AI behind the scenes. It's me. Hi, thank you. So thank you. And then I've gotten text messages. I kind of feel like crying. I've gotten text messages. I've gotten voice notes. I've gotten DMs. I've had people I had one of my son's girlfriends sent me a voice note and she goes, Sarah, I know this might seem funny because I'm 20, but I just want to tell you I'm so proud of you. And I was like, that means something to me. I know I'm 50, but it's yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you. And this is so interesting, you guys, because if you listen to the past episodes, you will know by now that Discover Hope was born out of my reality of losing my late husband, Sheldon Koch, in February of 2018. And it was through that experience that I was like, wait, what is going on? How come when people die, at least in the world I'm living in, no one's talking about it? I want to talk about why am I the person that's making people feel uncomfortable when it's my husband died? You know what I'm saying? And so, and I'm very much a learner. And so in my journey after Sheldon died, I was like, surely there'll be something on YouTube. And podcasts have come really far in the last 7 years, but there were podcasts, but in my own experience, there was there was no space. There was not a space that I could click into that I could go, oh, they're talking about this now, or they're talking about that now. And so that is the rooting of Discover Hope. But what's so amazing or interesting is now that it's launched, I'm able to see it from a different perspective and go, oh, some of this is not that maybe it's not making sense, but I was I feel like there's just some conversations that I need to have in this chair to maybe help connect some of the dots. And not that you're not smart, obviously you're very intelligent, but I was like, oh, there might be missing pieces along the way. So I thought what we would do is take today, and this would be I think in the traditional podcasters world, this would be called a bonus episode or something, or bonus content. But I think for me, and you'll get to know me more as we, grow together. Words are very important to me. And when something lands, it lands. But until then, I just kind of try on different things, and I'm not afraid to change things. So for now, we're going to call this the story behind the story. And so the three things that we're going to cover today are: what exactly is this? Why now? And who are you inviting people to sponsor and make donations when you haven't even told us about you yet? So I know, and I know. So first of all, what is Discover Hope? As you know, it's a space to come when the script of your life gets flipped, be it death, divorce, disappointment, diagnosis. And I'll back it up a little bit. And in other content, I talk about that my late husband was a pastor. And we ended up planting, which is like a startup, a church in University Place. And we were doing this in like 2009. We launched in 2010. And at that time, it's funny to see like the church world has its own trends, just like style and music and all of those things. So kind of the trend at the time, I went bonkers with white strips yesterday, and I think I burnt my mouth. So, but I hope my teeth are white. Like I hope these are like sparkling back at you, but my mouth is, I'm not nervous. I've just damaged my gums. So hold on. Thank you. The things we do. Okay, back at the time in 2009, 2010, kind of the trend in the church world was to name your church something that didn't sound like a church. Isn't that hilarious? It's like when bars name their bar The Office. You know what I'm saying? So they could be like, oh, no, I'm just at the office, all of that's just funny to me. Anyway, so Sheldon was thinking of something like Quest or this or that. I just remember Quest. And I'll never forget where I was. I was at the corner of Orchard and Center Street, and he was talking to me, and he was just going on and on about the name of the church. And it was his church, so he could name it whatever he wanted. But I just said, you know what? I said, what about just naming it Hope? And it was Hope Community Church. But I said, what about just naming the church Hope? Because at the end of the day, doesn't hope just kind of mean that no matter what goes on in our life, we could look at our circumstance and go, well, this sucks, but this doesn't have to be how my story ends. And so I just love you guys so much, how so much of my last life gets to interlace into my now life. And even to me, that's like this way of bringing that life into my new life. And I don't know, I just think I'm going to just let that go there. But I like that. I like that I don't have these concrete, like, nope, that was that life. We don't talk about that life. It's like this interwoven new experience that I'm getting to have. So, and I hope that you can like let yourself have that thought too. Like, oh yeah, I guess we can look at life that way. So that's kind of like where Discover Hope came from, like in its like the naming of everything. And what it is ultimately when Sheldon died, my experience was, as you know, I wanted to talk about it. And I do mean, I was the lady like at Costco, and they're like, you're checking out. And at this time, the kids were younger, so we were like, they were with me a lot in those times. And somebody would say, oh, how are you? And I'm not kidding. I'd be like, oh, I'm good, But 6 months ago, my husband died. And the other person just can get me like grapes, bread, milk, and I'm like just staring at them, and then they're staring back at me, and bless their hearts, because there's, like I've said before, there's not a cultural list of questions or things that we say when someone dies. When somebody's pregnant, we could say, oh, are you pregnant? Which we kind of should be careful with that one. But if you don't say that one, you say, oh, they bring up the fact that they're pregnant, and then you say, oh, when are you due? Is it your first, second, or third, or whatever? Are you having a boy or girl? Do you know the name? Are you having a natural birth or a this birth? We have all of like this perfect stranger, you know what I mean? But with death, like I've said, my experience was I felt like I needed to be silenced. I think that's what I'm wanting to say. And so this space is to I wanted to create a space where people could come and just hear somebody talk raw and honest and uncomfortable. Like I realize some of the things I'm going to say aren't necessarily comfortable, but just because they're not comfortable, one, doesn't mean that they weren't my experience. And two, doesn't mean that it's not true, that it wasn't true for me. You know what I'm saying? And so in that, the kids we'd go to the car and be like, Mom, why do you always have to do that? And I'd be like, I was like, I'm socially aware enough to be like, I realized, but I wasn't like trying to harm anyone, And so anyway, that ultimately is what this is going to be about. And I realized that if you're here and you're kind of like, this is going to be an unfolding process because what we're doing here, what I'm doing, I haven't seen this. This is something like this whole vision came to me 6.5 years ago. I've been thinking about it and sketching it and processing it. And then it literally has just come into being. So then let's answer the question of, okay, but what about these 4 Ds? Because I always say a place to come when the script of your life gets flipped, be it death, divorce, disappointment, diagnosis. And then you could be like, did you go through all of that? Not all but one. So now, current day. So here's how that came to be. So in my path, I'd be talking to somebody and, there I was married and parenting kids with my late husband, Sheldon. Then all of a sudden I'm what our culture would call a single mom. But I came up with the term independently parenting because I don't know why. I just felt like single, I don't know, just to me, when people would call me a single mom, I felt like it wasn't a positive. And I'm not saying that about single moms because I was one. You know what I mean? That was the way it felt for me. I was like, that doesn't land right with me. So somebody say, oh, this is my friend Sarah. Or if it was it made sense, they'd say, oh, she's a single mom. I'd go, actually, I'm independently parenting. And then if the other person was independently parenting, they're like, I like that. I'm like, girl, use it. Or guy, use it. Because it's like, yeah, we get to redefine and have words that match our reality. You know what I mean? So I would be in these situations where somebody's talking to me and maybe they went through a divorce and they would be talking and they'd be really kind of getting into their suffering. And then it's like all of a sudden they'd kind of snap out of it and go, oh, but I know I didn't go through what you went through. And I would say, well, but you went through a divorce. I was like, listen, I don't know if I could have gone through a divorce because if my story was that my husband had been the one to initiate the divorce, I can be a little cray-cray. And I'm not sure how that would have went down. And I'll never have to know, thank God. But I would ultimately, where I'm going with all of this is maybe somebody went through a really big disappointment. Or maybe somebody would go, I remember one person specifically saying, they go, oh my gosh, your husband died? My husband was diagnosed with leukemia. And then they snapped into this but I know that's nothing like what you went through. And I should just be happy that my husband's alive. And then I would say, but listen, what you're suffering, you're unknown because Sheldon died suddenly of a massive heart attack. I mean, he was here one breath and gone the next. And so I was like, are you kidding? If I had to walk with Sheldon through going through doctors saying, giving him a life expectancy, I would lose my ever-loving mind. And then it kind of what I formulated for myself was, oh, the experience I'm having is I think there's a pecking order, an unspoken pecking order in our culture as far as whose suffering is more. And I get the psychology world does have different life events. I'm not laughing. Do you know that they say laughter is the sound of healing? So sometimes I will be deflecting, but oftentimes when I'm laughing, it's because something does strike me funny. In this scenario, it's that. But they'll say you get 75 points for death. You get 15 points for losing your job. But who are we to say that? Because who are we to say another human being's suffering is greater than another person's suffering? And so then as this idea of Discover Hope or having a place where people could come when the script of their life gets flipped, I would go, oh, well, it doesn't have to be unique to I can share my story. But then my whole heart was I love storytelling and I love good storytellers. And so I was like, and then like if you look back at like ancient civilization, like storytelling was how values were passed along. That's how legacy and lineage was taught. Like it was through the art of storytelling. And so that's kind of, so then now we loop in that. And then, okay, so that's like, what is Discover Hope and why the 4Ds? So let's talk about the why now. Okay, so this is crazy. Speaking of diagnosis, so I remarried in October of 2021 to my now husband, Timm, with 2 M's. And I do say he is my double portion. He's the best. And he'll be on here one day, like as when he comes on the scene, the idea is that Timm will come on and we'll get to talk about like what that was like and what was that like integrating our family, because Timm doesn't have biological kids of his own and was never married before me. And so we'll get to hear from him and more on that. But so I remarried in 2021 and you guys, 18 months in to Timm and I being married, he's getting into bed one night and I go, "Oh, what is that on?" He was like, looked like he had like a bruise on his belly. And we had just done this huge renovation of our backyard and he had been carrying like these huge pavers, like the 80 to 100 pound ones. And like when you lean something on your leg and then lean, like you're kind of carrying something with your body. It literally looked like maybe he had a blood blister. And he goes, "Oh, I don't know. It must be a blood blister from the backyard, whatever." And so, but do you know, when I look back, it's like, I think I knew that night. And ultimately a week goes by, I say, "Hey, honey, I think that doesn't look right. I think you better go get that checked out." And long story short, 18 months into our marriage, Timm was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic melanoma, which if you know anything about that type of a cancer, it is like deadly. So that's going to be in a whole nother episode. But why now? Like, how come Discover Hope? Because it does seem like it just kind of like we cannonballed onto the scene. And so Timm is 2 years and 1 month in. So he was diagnosed. We knew in March of 23, but Timm was formally diagnosed in April of 23. So in April of 25, so just 2 months ago, Timm had a big CT scan, PET scan, all of this. And ultimately what came back from that was they were calling him, he's had a complete response to treatment. We weren't out of the woods yet, but so I put, and with Timm's cancer journey, I'm kind of like this with social media. Like now the Discover Hope's launched, I'm trying to figure out how do I get it out there, but I don't want to be annoying. You know what I mean? So on my personal page, because we do have a Discover Hope podcast Instagram, little plug there. But on my personal page, I've always my social media has always just been it's been a genuine reflection of my own life. So I don't have certain days that I post basically especially after Sheldon died, because I was so public with my grief, but it wasn't like I tapped into some algorithm. I would feel like I would almost get these messages downloaded to me and then I would post. And so, but that's always been true of me. So all of that to say, with Timm's cancer diagnosis, we definitely put it out there like, "Hey, life update," when he was first diagnosed. Our approach, and listen, whatever, if you have a diagnosis and if you're walking a cancer journey or anything else like this, and if your mantra is F cancer and you have the ribbons and the bracelets and everything, send me one. I would love one. That wasn't, that isn't Timm. And so obviously it's kind of cool, right? Like in life, we get to express ourselves, what's true for us. And so in that, we definitely would do little posts of kind of updates and stuff, because people are praying, people are championing, people care. And so anyway, we would do updates there. And then we did come into a very wealth of information of a more nutritional support, and it's a platform called Chris Beat Cancer. And so that was a very, very helpful piece of the journey. And so when we came into that, I would just tag people, you know what I mean? But it was never like, I think because of my background in the church world and always feeling like, I don't know if I should be the person telling someone how they should live their life. Like, I can make suggestions, but it never landed well with me to be like telling somebody else how to live their life. I mean, we have like morals and you have like guidelines, but I just felt like there was too many things. Just felt like there was a little bit too much that maybe that shouldn't be in somebody's like control, essentially. So because of that, I'm very sensitive to information that I disseminate, because I think that I do align with with great power comes great responsibility. And not like I have great power, but I feel like Sheldon's death was so powerful that I've always wanted to be very responsible with my voice. So that said, when the great news came in of the potential complete response to treatment with Timm in April of 25, I made a post of like, hey, we might be out of the woods. And in that, I had quite a few people reach out via text, DMs, all the things, asking, what did Timm do? And you guys, this is how Discover Hope actually came onto the scene kind of so quickly, in regard to like, it wasn't like there was a big ramp up. It was just like in May, I was like, hey, guess what, guys? I might be doing this thing. And then a week ago, it's like, here we are. So what I found was I was responding to different people's texts and DMs, which I love them. Please send them, because now we're going to even have more information to give and like more of a streamlined approach. So what I found myself is people would ask questions and I would send voice memos, because my thought was I always wanted somebody to hear me. Because what our experience in the cancer world was, we wanted to walk gingerly of, we're not here to tell you what to do. And also we are for conventional treatment. We are for complementary treatment and holistic. And why not do anything you can to save your life? And so I thought if somebody could hear my voice in a voice memo, they would hear my tone of like, hey, this is what Timm did. This is what worked for us. And first of all, I would just say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Because you guys, like, Timm got his diagnosis on a Sunday night through my chart. Like, literally, we got an email notification that he has metastatic melanoma. And so I would say, like, I don't know how your diagnosis came in, but I'm so sorry you have it. And then it was almost like, because I've done a lot of these, interactions, I would end up feeling I could almost predict the next 2 to 3 questions someone would have and stuff. And so, and because like I have a job, I'm a realtor, I, work for myself, but still I have a responsibility to like be like an income producing partner in my home. So I found myself, I said to Timm one day, I'm like, oh, honey, it's awesome. I'm loving getting these texts and DMs, but I'm kind of finding myself spending a little bit more time than maybe I should. It's pulling away from real estate to send these voice memos, but I want to be helpful. So I said, I think what I'm going to do, because, I had gone to a new building to lease my office. It's an urban workspace in Tacoma called At the Road Center, and it's amazing. And unbeknownst to me, when I came here, they have a podcast studio. This is where I'm recording from, which it's like, can you believe that? Like, just life is there to support us when we're looking for it and when we're willing to let life look different than we thought it should look, right? So I went back in my emails as I was getting ready to record this to go, it was like literally April 16th or 20th or something. No, I feel like I would have known if it was 420. Just a little sidebar. So I think it was like April 16th, and I emailed Becca, who manages kind of all of the details around here, said, hey, Becca, I was just curious, what does it look like for somebody to lease studio time in the podcast? And she's like, oh, okay, we'll set you up with this meeting. And so I ended up having a meeting with the owner, and producer wasn't available, so we connected later, but whatever. So I go into this meeting and I said, well, here's what I'm thinking. I wasn't thinking of starting a podcast. I said, I'm actually have a lot of people reaching out because my husband's diagnosis, and thank God because of his, like, the success that he's having. And I thought if I could just record some, like, since we have a podcast studio here, like, what would it hurt? And then Reed is his name. And he's like, oh, Sarah, like, that's awesome. And he's just complimentary and just was like, you're really well spoken. And then we got to talking about, and I was like, well, I was like, kind of hold on for a second, because this is going to sound very dramatic, but this is my life. I said, I've been through a lot. 7 years ago, I was suddenly widowed. And 5 months before that, my dad died. And, Becca and Reed's eyes are just like, boing, boing. And I'm like, I know, you guys, I feel like I'm traumatizing you. And then I was like, no, actually, I've had this whole concept that I've been essentially sitting on for the last 6.5 years. And literally, I felt like this, like somebody popped a cork out of my mouth, and I just was like, brrr. And like if it was like a cartoon, it was like this, like, tape was just like, like a film was just like falling out of my mouth. And I am socially aware. So like I kept looking at Reed and Becca as I'm talking, and I'd be like, you guys, I realized this was supposed to be just a 30-minute meeting about this. And they're like, no, like, keep going. And I was like, okay. So then at the end of it, I was like, yeah, I think I might be ready to just kind of launch this whole thing. And they're like, yeah, I think so. So that is how, like, so basically the great news of Timm's diagnosis. And because as you've heard me say, like, my heart of this whole thing is to help. And do you know how freeing this is to be doing all of this? Especially think of like the day that we're living in, where everything's about, like, a lot of life is about being an influencer and what are your numbers? What are your metrics? What are your followers? And I don't have TikTok because that's the whole thing. My mom is basically, she's given me good wisdom, but I'm also just chosen not to have TikTok. And my kids in our home, you cannot have TikTok until you graduate from high school. And there's a good reason. It's not just for like parental management. It's like there's a reason, rhyme, whatever. You get what I'm saying. Whew. Okay, I'm gonna take a breath. Okay, so in a day and age of like all the numbers and what are your stats? Do you know how freeing this is to genuinely just want to help and to realize I'm not for everyone. This is not going to be a space for everybody, but I know it's going to be a space for someone. And that is what makes me happy. Like, so that is how we got here kind of so rapidly. Like, it's totally grassroots. I'm loving it. I said to Timm, I'm like, I feel like, because I really don't have a lot of hobbies. I play guitar, but not a lot. And I love my dog. His name is Biggie Dwayne. I'm a late in life dog lover. He's a bull terrier with a spot. I'm sure I'll bring him on here at some point. And my kids, I really like my husband. I have things, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like this, like the details of the podcast might become a hobby. And then, okay, so lastly, let's wrap this up. I'm laughing because I too was like, that was kind of ballsy of me to launch the podcast, inviting people to sponsor episodes and to invite people to make donations. Okay, here's why. One, like on the technical side of things, I had to record all of that. So the intro and the outro, which has the "If Discover Hope has helped you at all," those were recorded like a month ago because those go on to. So once I'm done recording, Quentin will then take it with his team, and then they give it back to me so beautifully, and I'll tag him in all of this because if anybody is looking to start a podcast or music recordings, he's so talented beyond this room. And he's a wonderful soul to work with. So, yeah, it's been so delightful. We didn't know each other before this. So that has been so wonderful. There's just beautiful human beings on the planet. And I love getting to know people in different spaces of time, right? So we had to do all of this stuff a month ago. And so when Discover Hope was being birthed in me, I wasn't thinking it would be a podcast. You know what I'm saying? But since it is, and I'm sure you subscribe to podcasts. How do podcasts sustain themselves financially? They have subscriptions. So we subscribe, like I'm True Crime Girl. I have 2 subscriptions to True Crime. And we also get the goal one day is that we will have people that want to advertise here, because I think this is going to be, I know this is a worthwhile space of therapists and life insurance and different modalities and all the things, whatever. So, but the one thing I knew was I was not going to have a barrier to have Discover Hope be available, which would be a subscription. And just a little bit of my own story is my dad worked for Prudential for 35 years, which means he was a financial planner, which means I happened to be born into a family where my dad was aware of life insurance. You know what I mean? So that's just what you did. Like you have life insurance. And so don't you think that's wild? Like, because Sheldon was a pastor, and it's like pastors, at least for Sheldon, he didn't you don't go work an extra shift and get overtime. You know what I mean? And I was in real estate and still am, but still my point being, I could see why people don't pay that for life insurance when you're like, well, we've got 4 kids, braces or life insurance. Life insurance. There's always room for both. So all of that to say, I often, when Sheldon died, I had the privilege. I don't think I needed to stay home this long, but yet I also am like, well, I didn't drag my feet. I was able to stay home for 18 months from work, you guys. We also owner occupied a duplex. So we lived in one half and had, technically in the life, they'd be called tenants, but friends that rented the other half. And so basically we had very low overhead. And so, and then I had a real estate company that 6 months after Sheldon died, I realized I needed to let that go. Good homes. I love you all. Because I realized for me, I needed to deep dive into this new world that I was in, that the kids were in, to hopefully be able to give us the best shot at rebuilding our life with tools, and a solid foundation. So, okay. I would say to people, I was like, I hope this comes across right, but I would say, I feel like a privileged widow. Like, what do people do when you don't have that, and GoFundMe are amazing. And we had one too. And I'm so thankful for that. Like, life will support us. But basically what I'm trying to say, sorry, I'm taking a long time, is that I wasn't going to put up anything that was going to make connecting to Discover Hope difficult. So that is why, because I did even have feedback where somebody was like, whoa, that was kind of ballsy, essentially. And I was like, I know. And I know that I couldn't explain it in that setting, but you know what's beautiful? That speaks to my growth as a human being, because 7 years ago, there is no way I would have said that. I was like, I don't want them thinking I'm a money grubber. I'm not. I am essentially, inviting people to donate or to sponsor if they want. What's great, so then the last thing, and then we'll button this up, is, I did open up Discover Hope as an LLC, so it is its own business. But because I realized we were going to launch quicker than I was ready to, ultimately, in time, I will be setting this up to where it will be a nonprofit, like a 501c3. That takes way more time to establish with the government and within its own self, because you have to have, which we want. I want to have board members and all of that. But the heart behind all of that, having the nonprofit, is, I always said from day one, I'm like, one day when I create this space, I'm going to have people donate and all of that, so that if there's somebody that needs, they're like, well, I would do therapy, but I really can't afford it. Or basically, I want to make it really hard for people to not heal. And I know in time we're going to have people donate. I know that we're going to have therapists go, I'll donate an hour, or I know, you guys, that what we're doing in here, what I love is I know that we're naturally creating a new thing. I know it. I know it with all my heart, and I'm so thankful. I do love getting to be a front runner in this. Like it sucks that how I had to get here, but do you know this? And this is how we'll end. Do you know that I've always, since I was a little kid, I did, like at one point I wanted to be a hairdresser. At one point I wanted to be a therapist. I always wanted to be a wife and a mom. Literally, I grew up I was born in 75. So it means I was like in the 80s. I was like, I want to be a wife and a mom when I grow up. And my dad used to always say, Bud, you're going to make a great wife and mom. And you can also do anything else you want. So, but anyway, but the one thing I would always say is no matter what I end up doing with my life, I want my life to count. Oh, I want my life to count. I've always wanted my life to count for something great. I don't want to be famous. I'm too awkward. I don't need to be, I want to be important to the people, to where I need to be important, but I don't need you to, I hope to be helpful, but I don't have to be the most important thing. And I know I'm not. So I do think we're onto something amazing. And I'm thankful. And I hope that gives a little context to what is going on around here. That's kind of how I roll. So thanks for hanging in. We'll see you next time. All right, before we go, if Discover Hope has helped you or encouraged you at all, I wanted to invite you to be a part of the bigger picture. One way you could do that would be by subscribing, liking, or sharing any of the episodes with someone you think might benefit from it, or even on your social media platforms. Another way you could do this if you'd like to make a donation or even sponsor an episode on behalf of someone you love, you can do that by clicking the link to discoverhope.org below, or you can head on over to our website where you can make donations there or also sponsor at discoverhope.org. You guys, thank you for being a part of this. It's a dream come true. And I truly believe that we are giving grief a language and making room for an abundant amount of hope. Thanks so much.